The fluorescent lights in room 613 never seemed to fully shut off. Even in the dead of night, they hummed softly, casting an unsettling glow that made the shadows pool in odd corners, stretching in strange ways. I've been staring at them for hours? Days? It's hard to say. Time feels wrong here, like it's been pulled too tight, about to snap at any moment. I woke up here about a week ago. Or at least, that's what Dr. Matthews says. But the first thing I noticed wasn't the harsh scent of bleach in the air, or the cold, metal bed frame nailed into the floor, or even the wire mesh in the window glass. It was that water stain on the ceiling. It sprawls out like a dark, brown shape, and sometimes, when I look at it just right, it almost seems to form a face. I try not to focus on it anymore. I swear it blinks. Sometimes, when I stare at it long enough, the room itself feels like it's stretching, like the walls are moving away, and the ceiling is rising higher, pulling into some infinite space. But then I blink, and it's just a tiny, stifling room again. They tell me my name is Rachel. Just Rachel. Like I'm some forgotten thing, like I washed up on the shore and no one bothered to claim me. Dr. Matthews told me that the first time we met. His wire-rimmed glasses caught the light in a way that made his eyes vanish completely. "You've experienced something traumatic," he said, scribbling something down in that old leather notebook of his. "A break from reality. We're here to help you put the pieces back together." But what pieces? My mind feels like an empty room, echoing with footsteps that might be memories. Or maybe it's someone walking outside my door, their steps keeping time with the erratic thrum of my own heart. Every session starts the same way. "Do you know why you're here, Rachel?" And every time, I shake my head, watching his pen scratch across the page. They won't tell me. Not Dr. Matthews, not the nurses with their tight smiles, not even the orderly who brings me my pills 3 times a day. "You'll remember when you're ready," they say. But ready for what? What could be so bad that they'd rather let me sit here, drowning in questions, than just tell me what's going on? The pills come like clockwork. Yellow ones in the morning that taste like chalk, making everything feel slightly off balance. I lay them out on the bedside table before swallowing them, 3 in a perfect triangle, no more, no less. Then the blue ones at lunch, which make the world feel like it's underwater. I have to count the bubbles that rise to the surface, making sure they're always an odd number. White pills at night, supposed to help me sleep, but all they seem to do is make my dreams sharper, more vivid. Dr. Matthews says they'll help clear my mind and help me remember who I am. But lately, I'm not sure I want to remember. There's something about the pills that feels off. Yesterday, after I took the yellow ones, I noticed dark veins creeping up my arm. I showed them to the nurse, but she told me everything looked normal. But I can still see them, writhing beneath my skin like black worms, forming strange, symmetrical patterns. The ward is what you'd expect from a psychiatric hospital in the 1960s. Long, sterile hallways with flickering lights, a common room where the patients hang out during the day, and the constant, heavy smell of industrial cleaner that never quite covers something else beneath it. Something metallic. Sometimes I could swear it smells like copper. Like blood. There are other patients here too. Mrs. Albright always sits in the corner of the common room, her bony fingers tirelessly knitting. Click, click, click. The nurses say she hasn't spoken in years. She just sits there with those blank eyes, staring into nothing. But sometimes, when I walk by, I swear I can feel her eyes on me, like she recognizes me, and it sends chills down my spine. Emily paces the halls, having conversations with empty chairs, her voice high-pitched and almost musical in a way that makes my teeth ache. Ms. Davis, the former professor, believes she's Marie Antoinette. They're all lost in their own little worlds, trapped in their private hells, just like me. But at least they know why they're here. The dream started on my 3rd night. At first, it was just flashes, images and sensations that would disappear the moment I tried to focus on them. A kitchen with white tiles. Fluorescent lights buzzing above. Something red spilling across the floor. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, the sheets twisted around my legs like restraints. In the dreams, my hands are always holding a knife, a sharp, silver blade gleaming in the harsh light, and it's always dripping, always spotless. That's when I started noticing things, little details that didn't quite fit. Like how the number on my door sometimes says 614 when I'm certain it was 613 the day before. Or how the emergency lights in the hall cast shadows in impossible directions. Or how sometimes, late at night, I hear music. A beautiful, delicate melody, like it's coming from an old music box. The first time I heard it, I followed the sound down the dark hallway. The emergency lights turned everything green, wrong, and the shadows seemed to pull away from my feet as I walked. The music led me to a door I'd never seen before, tucked into a corner that seemed to bend the darkness around it. That's when I heard the voice, a whisper right behind my ear. "Don't touch it." I spun around, but the hallway was empty. When I turned back, the door was gone. Or maybe it was never there to begin with. Maybe it was just a trick of the light, a glitch in my fractured mind. That's when the headaches started. Not regular headaches. These feel like something squirming behind my eyes, pushing against them from the inside. The pain comes in waves, each wave bringing flashes of something. A kitchen knife gleaming under fluorescent lights. Red droplets hitting white tile. The taste of blood in my mouth that doesn't fade, no matter how many times I rinse. And with each wave, the walls of the ward feel like they're crumbling away, the other patients' faces distorting into monstrous masks, their voices a jumbled mess of screams and whispers. I tried telling Dr. Matthews about it during our session. His pen stopped moving for a moment, just long enough to make me wonder what he wasn't saying. The light hit his glasses again, making them shine like mirrors, and for a split second, I swear I saw something move in their reflection. Something that wasn't in the room with us. "The medications will take some time to balance your perceptions," he said carefully, adjusting those reflective glasses. "Try to focus on what you know is real." But how can I trust what's real when my own body feels like it's betraying me? The black veins have spread past my elbows now, a tangled web pulsing under my skin. Sometimes I catch them moving, even when I'm not looking directly at them. Like they're trying to reach for something. Or run away from something. And when I touch them, they squirm beneath my fingers, as if they're desperate to break free. The same melody haunts me every night. The last article I saw had a picture of the music box. It was old, a mix of dark wood and ornate brass, its edges decorated with delicate filigree. The moment I laid eyes on it, I knew it, though I couldn't pinpoint why. Maybe it was from my dreams. Or maybe somewhere else, somewhere I shouldn't know. A creeping chill ran through me, a sense of recognition that made my skin crawl. When I was about to file the papers back into the drawer, something caught my eye. Behind the wall panel, something dark was seeping through. At first, I thought it was just water damage, but as my fingers brushed against it, they came away sticky. Red. I pressed against the panel, and it shifted slightly, revealing a narrow gap behind it. I pulled out a notebook. It wasn't Dr. Evans' usual leather-bound one. This one was old, pages yellowing with age and brittle to the touch. And as I flipped through, my heart stopped. The handwriting inside was mine, but the dates were from 1963. Each entry described something chilling, perfect arrangements. The most beautiful smiles. The most enchanting music. July 14th. The music guided my hands. She was so much more beautiful this way, at peace. Finally. August 2nd. He struggled. It was messy. But the music calmed him. They all find peace eventually. September 10th. 3 this time. A family. They look so happy now, frozen forever in a moment of joy. The notebook slipped from my trembling hands, and suddenly, the memories weren't hazy fragments anymore. They were flooding back in sharp, clear detail. Every moment. Every carefully arranged pose. The metallic taste of blood, the feel of cold skin, the way the blade gleamed under the light. I remember now. I remember everything. It started with my dollhouse when I was 7. Everything had to be perfect. The tiny furniture, arranged in precise angles. The little family, positioned just so, mother in the kitchen, father in his study, the kids at the table, each one placed with mathematical accuracy. If anyone moved them, even a little, I would feel this suffocating pressure in my chest, an unbearable wrongness that wouldn't lift until everything was perfect again. As I grew older, the need for perfection intensified. My room was always immaculate, books arranged by height and color, hangers spaced exactly 1 inch apart, my bed corners folded at precise 45-degree angles. The world outside was chaos, but in my space, everything was controlled. Everything was perfect. The first one wasn't planned. She was my roommate, and she was so messy. Dishes piled in the sink, clothes thrown around, picture frames crooked on the walls. I tried to fix it while she slept, but no matter what I did, she always ruined it. Always brought chaos back into my world. That night, the music box played the soft, comforting tune of my grandmother's antique box that I'd wound up to help me sleep. Such a soothing melody. When I saw my roommate's body, her limbs twisted at that ugly, wrong angle, I knew what I had to do. I arranged her just right, her body positioned with exacting precision, her expression serene, peaceful, beautiful. The music played on as I worked, guiding my hands. From then on, I couldn't stop seeing the imperfections everywhere. People, living their chaotic lives, their unbalanced existences. But I could fix them. I could make them perfect, just like me. The realization hit me hard, like a physical punch to the gut. I stumbled backward, gasping for air. The library around me seemed to shift, the books blurring into shapes that no longer made sense. The music box's melody grew louder in my ears, relentless and commanding. Then, suddenly, a hand gripped my shoulder. I spun around to find Dr. Evans standing there, his face pale and drawn. "Jane," he said, his voice low, urgent. "We need to talk." His hand tightened on my shoulder, and everything around me began to ripple like static on a TV screen. I felt a sickening sensation, like I was falling, not in my body, but deeper, like my mind was peeling away, layer by layer, until I was left with nothing but raw nerves. "I remember now," I whispered, the words tasting foreign in my mouth. "I killed them. I killed all of them." Dr. Evans nodded slowly, his glasses catching the light in a way that erased his eyes. "Yes, Jane. You did. And we've been trying to help you see that for a very long time." The library vanished in an instant. No slow fade, no dimming, just a blink, and it was gone. I was now in a concrete room. Stark, cold, and cruelly real. The walls were bare, except for faint, jagged scratches that looked like they had been carved there over the years. Tiny music notes, etched deeply into the surface. I looked down at my hands, my breath catching. The black veins were gone, replaced by pale skin marred with faint scars and calluses. I was wearing an orange prison jumpsuit, stiff against my skin. Across from me, Dr. Evans, if that was even his real name, sat on a metal stool, a thick folder in his lap. No notebook, no pen, no wire-rimmed glasses. Just a clipboard and a tired expression that seemed to carry the weight of years. Where's room 613? I croaked, the words scraping from my throat. Dr. Evans didn't answer immediately. He opened the folder, pulled out a black and white photograph, and slid it across the table. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. The photo showed a body, my first victim, posed grotesquely on the floor. Her limbs twisted into unnatural angles. Her face was peaceful, serene, an unsettling smile on her lips. Beside her, a music box sat open, its melody long silent. "That was your first victim," Dr. Evans said softly. "Your roommate, Hannah Brooks. You arranged her like a doll. You even left a note calling her your most beautiful creation. Do you remember that now?" I nodded, bow rising in my throat. The memory, sharp and raw, flooded back. But the room felt wrong, like the walls themselves were mocking me. And the others? I whispered, my voice barely audible. Dr. Evans sighed, sliding more photographs across the table. Each one worse than the last. A woman on a kitchen floor, limbs arranged at impossible angles. A man in his living room, his face frozen in an unnatural, blissful smile. A family of 3 posed around a dinner table, their lifeless bodies arranged as if they were still talking. You called it art, Dr. Evans said, his voice heavy. The newspapers called you the music box murderer. Do you remember what you told the judge at your trial? I shook my head, my eyes burning with tears I refused to let fall. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to remember. You told the court you weren't guilty because they weren't dead to you. You said they were perfect now, that you'd brought them peace. The jury didn't agree. He leaned in closer, his voice growing hard. That was 12 years ago, Jane. And no matter how many realities you've invented to protect yourself, the truth doesn't change. You're not in room 613. You're in solitary confinement, awaiting execution. The words hit me like a punch to the gut, the roar of my pulse drowning out everything else. No, I whispered, shaking my head in disbelief. That's not possible. I was in the hospital. There were other patients. Emily. Mrs. Albright. The music box. None of it was real. Dr. Evans interrupted, his voice as cold as the steel walls. You've been living inside your mind, creating scenarios to avoid facing the truth. The hospital was a construct, a way for you to pretend you were the victim. But the truth is you're here. On death row. And your execution is scheduled for tomorrow. I staggered back, the sound of metal scraping against concrete echoing in the small room. No, I gasped again. I don't believe you. Dr. Evans stood, gathering the folder under his arm. You don't have to believe me, Jane. The clock doesn't care whether you accept reality or not. He knocked twice on the heavy steel door behind him, and it groaned open. 2 guards stepped in, their faces impassive. They moved toward me, and for a moment, I glimpsed the hallway outside, long, gray, and empty, lit by flickering fluorescent lights. Room 613. It wasn't a hospital ward. It was my cell number. The numbers bolted to the steel door had been my world for over a decade. As the guards hauled me to my feet, the faint melody of the music box crept back into my mind, uninvited. I hummed it under my breath, the rhythm echoing in my skull as they led me down the corridor. Each step felt like a ticking clock. Tomorrow I would die. But when they opened the heavy door to the execution chamber, I didn't see the sterile gurney I expected. Instead, I found myself staring at a room full of people. And they were all smiling.